I'm Sarah Butler. I run a PR consultancy called Sport Business Connected. And this is started as a client, become a very, very good friend of mine, Ursula. I'll let you introduce yourself and the company.
Hi, I'm Ursula Romero, and I own and run ISB International Sports Broadcasting. And thank you. Very excited to be here. Thank you, Sarah.
And the main topic, as you can see, is inside the global broadcast. We're going to be concentrating quite a bit on the World Games that was in Chengdu last year. We're going to start with a video and just give you a bit of a behind the scenes of the event, what went into it, and some of the amazing people that were involved in it, including this lady herself. It's a bit of a long video, but we thought actually you'd probably want to hear a bit more behind the scenes than listening to us rabbiting along at this time. So hit the video. Right, I think you can hear me back again. I think I'm back in. I think the reason why we wanted to show you the behind-the-scenes doc really was because when we talk about the World Games, a lot of people kind of look a little blankly at me. You know who the Olympics is. The World Games isn't so recognised, and I actually had the pleasure of doing the podcast. And that's, there were sports there that even from a sports person that's worked in sport in a PR capacity for 20 years, over 20 years, which is showing my age, but there were some sports that I had never heard of. And some amazing people behind those sports that I don't think ever really get much recognition. So it was lovely to have on the stage. Now, I'm going to hand it over to you. And it's 30 years of ISB. And I will go straight on. Tell me a bit more about ISB, and then we'll move on to, obviously, delivering the World Games.
Well, ISB, I have not been with ISB for 30 years, but I have been a large part. Some of you I can see in the audience know, Melanie and a few others. But I've been with ISB pretty much from the beginning. My dad created it in 1996 for the sole purpose of being the host broadcaster for the Olympic Games back in 1998 and then 2000 and then 2002, and then carried on to becoming Olympic Broadcasting Services. We decided to keep ISB on the side to do other events such as Pan Americans, European Games, mainly focus on large multi-sporting events, which is how we ended up with the World Games. The World Games reached out to us, I think it was after 2013 when they had their games in Cali in Colombia, and they reached out and said, hey, how can we make the World Games, put them on the broadcast, give them a broadcast. And so we started working with them. And we started with only 8 live productions, and then now in Chengdu we fast forwarded it to 20 live productions at the same time. So we had 34 sports, almost close to 4,000 athletes. We had about 1,300 people working under the broadcasts, which of course in comparison to the Olympics is not very much. But for a multi-sporting event such as the World Games, which most people have probably not heard of, is quite a lot. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very challenging at times, but we really tried to make it work using as many Chinese personnel, crew, equipment, and to really make it a local event.
Well, I know you had a lot of local crews, and also I know we just met somebody outside. I know there was a huge number of students that you brought over, and it's one of the big things we were talking yesterday with a journalist about. What advice would you give to students, younger people looking to get into the industry? And one of the things you said was get out there and get involved. And I think that was one of the big reasons why we reached out to a number of universities, both in China and also in the UK. And I know there's a number that came along. I mean, what would be, as I said, what would your advice be to bringing more youngsters into the industry?
I think that no matter how much the technology changes, and it's much easier to get images out there now. You don't have clunky cameras. You can use a phone. Yep. You could do so many different things now in comparison to 30 years ago, of course. Yep. But there's still the question: how do I get a job? How do I get into the industry? And like I was saying yesterday, just go for it. Like whatever. Even though you might just want to be a reporter, or you might want to be a commentator, or you might want to be an editor, but to get that experience to work on a multi-sporting event or a smaller event is just amazing. I started out as a liaison officer working at a athletics world championships, and I had no intention of working in the broadcast industry at all, but it was a summer job and I thought it was cool. And my dad said, "Do you want to go and work?" I said, "Okay, why not? Some extra money for the summer." And I ended up getting hooked and working the summer afterwards at the '94 World Cup. Then I worked at the next athletics world championships in '95. And I worked at the Olympics in '96 in Atlanta. And it just to the point I didn't really want to study anymore. I just wanted to work. So my advice is just get out there, whatever job you can get. And if you show enthusiasm and you want to learn, then, half the work is done.
Your experience, we've talked about this. I think was it 1984, your first Olympics? And you've worked in many since. What have you seen and over the years, and how these major events have changed?
Apart obviously from the technology side and the broadcast side and how things are broadcast, one of the things that we really try to do in Chengdu is to focus on quality, but really bring it back a little bit to how it used to be, where we didn't have 40 cameras. Yep. Really choose the right camera angles, choose the right lens, choose the right type of camera, and in some cases just do a one camera production. But if you focus on what the story is and on what you're talking about, I think that's what is important. And 1984, I think I was 6, and I still remember going to the opening ceremony. I remember going to the gymnastics and watching Mary Lou Retton, and I was fascinated with the fact, that everything was being told through a camera, and that the IBC was at the Universal Studios in LA, and my dad's office was in, I can't remember, one of the famous actresses, and his office had the sign, it was her dressing room. So I still remember that, and it was the magic of television, the magic of all of that still exists to an extent. But I think back then, I think it was a bit more closer. People were a bit more, it was like a big family, and you could still, everything was a bit more reachable. Now you go to an Olympics and there's 6,000 people working in broadcast alone, and the security is so high. So it still has that magic, but I think if we go back 20, 30 years, it was a bit more touchable or palpable.
Well, it sounds quite similar. I was interviewing Steve Ryder earlier, and we were having the same conversation about Formula One. If you go back and you see the videos of people just sort of walking on to the track, and people just lounging around and walking around with handheld cameras. Everything has changed so much. You mentioned to me about, I think it was Japan with the Winter Olympics, where everybody was just mingling with media and broadcast and athletes walking past.
Yeah, you could just, walk. You could walk around on the street, and because it was a small place, but you could run into anybody that had an accreditation. You never know who it was. Yeah. It could be an athlete, it could be an official, it could be a super VIP, and everybody could talk to each other. There wasn't that sort of, separation. I guess also, the Olympics weren't as big. I was reading an article the other day that they're now thinking about scaling back. There's 36 sports in Paris. So I think they're thinking about bringing it back a little bit more to a normal size. But
interesting.
But Chengdu was crazy. I mean, you remember we had to travel for an hour to get from one venue to the other. So it makes it difficult to go and hang out with your friends.
And security was so strict.
Yes,
there were so many passes, so many accreditation. I mean, actually, I will bring up this. I'm slightly going off script, so we're having a chat here about all the memories from China. But it was very strict, and everybody had to have accreditation, including one little guest that we had. Ursula found a little kitten before the World Games started in a bush, tiny little kitten. It's now the size, it's like a mini lion now. But even he had his own accreditation, right?
He did. We spoke to the police and they let him in, and we made him a little accreditation. And I was telling Sarah last night that, I don't know, maybe Liz remembers this, but in 2004 at the Olympics in Athens, this was probably not possible anymore. But I had a small white dog, and during the Paralympics, I can't remember why or how, but somebody decided that he should come and accompany me to work. And we had him hidden in the highlights room, and my friend decided to take him out for a walk and have a cigarette break, and she took him for a walk outside, and the security guard came up and said, what are you doing? You're not supposed to have a dog. And she was like, he has an accreditation, and he had a tiny little accreditation. And the guy was like, oh, sorry, so he was allowed to come back in. I don't think that's possible anymore, but
I don't know it is, but
there was no scanners or face recognition, anything.
No, we all thought the panda was the animal of the games, but I think it was a little kitten that is now grown into an absolute lion. But and he's still with you back in Spain now.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the script, and I wanted to mention, because I know you've mentioned it a few times, as the host broadcaster, and it's a term that we've often heard. If you work in the industry, it's a lot more understandable, but from your what does it really mean in practice at this scale for you?
Well, it's really, I mean, for us at least, and I think that's kind of become the household sort of rules, but the host broadcaster is the one that puts everything together, and makes sure that the production or the world feed is non-biased, is same for every athlete, every country, that the production level is the same for every sport. Of course, we're budget allowing, and that most of all that we make sure that we take care of the rights holders, that the federations are treated the same, that the local organizing committee is kept in mind, but most of all that the rights holders are taken care of. So a lot of people confuse the term host broadcaster with the actual host country broadcast company, but the host broadcaster is sort of the one that does the planning, the implementation, the production, and making sure that all the rights holders receive what they're supposed to receive when they're supposed to receive it.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, you always talk about storytelling being the most important thing. It doesn't matter whether that was how many years ago with only one or two cameras, with now we have, like you said, a multitude of cameras. But the one thing that and I know from Chengdu, which was a big point of it, was the advancement in technology and the equipment that you'd used, and it was shown in the video before, so we really wanted to get across. It's very difficult to explain something happening without actually seeing it in action. So what were the why did you want to bring in, what did you bring in, and what did you see as a real success from the games?
Oh, we thought that rather than again having 20 plus cameras per event, we thought it would be more interesting to actually focus on having proper camera positions per sport to tell the story with the cameras, but then invest in having technology and new technology to bring the sport closer to younger audiences. So we had, for example, the strobe motion, which you saw on the water skiing wakeboard. We included having the full production with ARRI cameras done with strobe motion, so you could really see the quality of the strobe motion. We had InnoMotion, which is also something that is not particularly new anymore, but we really wanted to focus more on spending our money on that. We also put a lot of effort into our vertical production, understanding that a lot of these sports are quite unknown, and there was such a big amount of feeds that we wanted to focus on vertical production to make sure that all the sports got the full attention that they should. And actually we had a quite a large amount of the vertical stories and feeds that we did that went viral over 10 days. So it was like the para jiu-jitsu had 15 million views.
Yep.
The underwater swimming had I don't know how many million views. So these kind of sports and these kind of events lend themselves to really tell stories for the younger generation.
Yeah, some of those numbers were nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, from sports that some of them I didn't know existed, but they were the ones that you didn't expect to have the numbers so much as the ones that did. I'm going to step on the World Games Live platform. I know you were the one that instigated that, brought it to the World Games. Can you talk to me why?
Well, similar to what I was saying before, because the World Games are fairly unknown and there are so many sports, that it was quite complicated to sell the rights or to make sure that all the sports were seen, because depending on the territory, some sports were more popular than others. So we decided that it would make more sense to actually create a custom-made bespoke platform, an OTT and VOD platform for the World Games. It was quite a hard endeavor, but I think we made it work. What we wanted to do is something cool, something easy to use, and also something that would involve the athletes and the federations. So the app is not only for streaming and for VOD, but it also has customized menu items for all the different sport federations. You can learn about the sport federations. You can learn about the athletes. Each athlete had their little, how do you call it?
Profiles.
Profiles, thank you. Where you were helping with the podcast for that. But it was really cool because there was a space for the athletes to be able to have their own space. And once you go into the app, similar to a Netflix or similar, you can have, recommendations according to how many views you had, what sports, whether it's team sports, individual sports, judge sports. And the next step now is to actually have the platform be able to, the athletes be able to clip their own footage, to upload their own footage, and to be able to promote themselves on the app.
Yeah, it was lovely to see the athletes engaging with it. And especially there were athletes with huge social followings from, like I say, sports that I personally didn't know a huge amount about. So that was really lovely to engage with them and see actually in their countries how big it actually was compared to, it's a big wide world out there for sports.
Flag football, lacrosse.
Oh, yeah, and it's lovely to see certain sports like flag football, lacrosse,
tug of war.
Tug of war. Tug of war was brilliant. If you were British, that was the one I wanted to watch. But for me, and everything from the Daily Show, when they had a roundup where you were going into the city and Chengdu and going around and sort of bringing the culture to the viewers back at home, which was lovely, and that was already also streamed through the platform.
Yeah.
What were your takings from it? What were the things that, especially from this World Games, what were the things that you took away, the highlights, apart from obviously having a new member in your household? But what were the real highlights for you? Was it the stories, the technology, the people? What was it that you remember from it?
I think it was just, as with all these events, I think the fact that we managed to put all these different sports, some of them had no broadcasting experience, some have more. Yeah. Some had never even understood what a run-up is or what graphics could be for live TV. And to be able to put all that together in a relatively short amount of time, because we really only had a year.
Yep.
with being so far away, the venues being so far apart, the language barrier being, of course, an issue as well, because Chengdu, even though it's a huge city, the English level is not as good as maybe a Shanghai or Beijing. So it was just a beautiful challenge, and being really surprised on how friendly and how lovely the people were. There's a lot of politics involved, of course, with all these things. Yep. And you have the LOC and the IWGA and the national federations and the international federations. But in the end, we made it work. And as always, you can do all the planning that you want. But we got there 1 month before and we had to start from scratch again.
And it is live sport.
Yeah. Live sports.
My final question, because I know we're looking, and I know we're coming to the end of the day, and everybody's looking for a beer after this, probably, or a glass of wine, obviously. But what's next for you? What's next for ISB? I know you have recently launched Concept Club. Tell me more about what you see ISB, the next chapter of ISB. We've hit 30 years. What's next for you?
Well, we're continuing to trying to evolve. We've now also have an ISB Films, which is focusing on making films, documentaries and fiction. We're also now, we have a little bit of a side gig with Concept Club, as you mentioned, which is actually creating events, just because we don't have better things to do. So we create the events and we broadcast them. But it's quite cool because it's actually, small events that have a mix of technology, workshops, broadcast, and urban sports. Yeah. And then continuing to look for opportunities for broadcast. So lots of bidding. I was telling Liz earlier that it's been like 2 weeks of bidding and writing and applying, and which is is a challenge, and it's also fun in itself. But then once you get it, then it's a whole different story. So we have a very cool, small and mighty team that most of them. Yep. Like I say, United Colors of Benetton, and which I'm very proud of. Yep. We have people from all over the world, mainly girls or
there's
women.
A remarkable number of women in these teams, which is it's lovely to see in this industry, especially being a woman myself. But yeah.
But I encourage everyone on our team to look for new opportunities, to grow, to learn. We're setting up our remote studio now. We're growing on that side as well. We have Lepus, which is our strobe motion AI technology, which we're also working on quite a lot. Yep. So yeah. Great.
I mean, it's been a pleasure. I mean, it's a pleasure for me to interview this lady. So, and thank you everybody for coming. I know it's the end of the day and it's been a long day, but I hope you have a lovely evening. Enjoy tomorrow, and thank you all for coming.